and thank you so much for joining us. I am Kristi Porter of Vector Global Logistics, and this is another episode of the Logistics with Purpose podcast series. And today I am excited to have a co-host here, Nuria Sierra, who's also on my marketing team. So Nuria, how are you? This is the first time we get to host together.
Yes, I know. I'm really excited to be here with you today. And well, I'm really looking forward to have a chat with Grant, with
I know.
the special guest.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm excited that we get to co-host together, and we get to have a guest on that I've been wanting to have on for quite a while. So I'm really excited for us to chat with Grant as well. So let's welcome Grant, who is the founder of Causeartist, whom I have been a fan of for quite a number of years now. So welcome, Grant. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good. This is so fun. So we have, I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. Nuria is in Bristol, UK, and you are in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So we have a really wide-ranging show on a lot of fronts today, and so perfect for your global audience as well. So this will be a lot of fun to for our audience to hear more about you and to hopefully represent the Causeartist team and community really well too. So thank you so much for being here. We're excited.
Wow. So Grant.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait. I'm very, very excited. I'm glad we can finally do this.
Yes.
Okay. So Grant, could you tell us a little bit about your childhood and where did you grow up?
Yeah,
I grew
that
up
is not a
in
Netherlands accent.
Yeah. Well, I actually grew up a little bit near you, Kristi. I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. So it's in the southern part of the United States, very, very hot and very warm and humid during the summertime. But yeah, you grow up very fast when you grow up in New Orleans, because you see a lot of different things. There's a lot of different aspects of the city. It's very dynamic, and it's racial diversity, it's economic diversity, a lot of good and bad things, of course, like any city has. But you really grow up quite fast, and you see a lot of things at an early age when you grow up in a city like that has a bunch of different things going on. So that's kind of where I started, and kind of, looked at the world from that perspective for a long time, was growing up there.
Fantastic. So it sounds like that shaped you a lot and kind of set you on the path that you're on now. So looking back, is there a story from your childhood that really shaped you, or having the hindsight that you're able to look back and you see how it kind of led you to where you are now?
I think there's many, I think, that we can all point to. But I grew up playing sports, and I grew up playing basketball. That was my first love in life. And in doing that, anybody that grows up in playing sports from a young age, on for a while, you're so sort of embedded in that sort of culture. And it does bring a lot of good aspects in it, camaraderie, and you get lifelong friendships, and you learn about, teamwork and adversity and wins and losses. I did not have a great attitude, and I was not good at losing. So I had to learn how to lose, very, very respectfully, graciously. But part of it is diversity, is what sports really brings into it. I mean, you have, white, black cultures come together. If it's mostly any sport, might be different religious backgrounds and certainly different economic backgrounds. So growing up, it was interesting because we traveled a lot and played in a lot of different areas. So we saw a lot of different cultures in different parts of America. But coming home, the thing that always has pointed out, it really struck me when I was a kid, and I really didn't realize it until as I got older, was that, we played basketball in the front yard a lot. And I would go to practice, and our team I was on, I was the only, white individual on the team. So, that was an interesting experience. But like when friends from the team would come over, we'd have some dinner and we shoot outside in the front yard. My mom came out one day, and she came up and she was like, "Hey, do y'all want to go in the backyard and play?" you know, and I was like, the backyard's like a school. We lived behind a middle school. So
Mm.
I like, my mom's telling me I can jump a fence. I mean, we're 14 probably. So you could jump a fence, go illegally play in this middle school. Right. I was like, sure. Like it's a whole full court. Like we have all kind of fun. I was like, this is great. And, you know, I didn't know at the time, but our neighbors across the street had a Confederate flag that was in their front yard. Right. And both my friends came over were African American. And so like we as kids, you don't really know that too much about like what that aspect means. And for my mom telling us, you know, she was looking out obviously for everybody involved, right? She was kind of looking out for all of us and just kind of, you know, didn't want anything negative to happen. But that really stands out just because that goes into a lot of different areas of when you understand what that means and what that happens, of like, what else does that mean from an economic point of view, you know, from a diversity and racism. It's just everything that goes into that affects everything in our lives, you know, whether it's a political system, whether our business system, everything. So that always kind of stuck with me as like, you know, things are different. People think differently. And, you know, no matter where we are in the world, people are always going to think differently and cultures are going to be different. And to really just, you know, not demean people or tell people that they're good or bad, but is to have conversations like we're having now. And, you know, so my mom talked to me about, you know, the reasons for that, sat us all down and talked, right? Like that was amazing. You know, knew more than I did. You know, my friends who were there, they're like, yeah, no, we understand, you know, like they got it because they understood it, you know, got treated a certain way in certain parts of their life. So that was eye-opening, you know, for me. But, you know, going down the line, you know, that always stuck with me is we always just have to open our eyes and discover different cultures and let people in, and how do we solve those problems, right? And I think a lot of what I've learned throughout my life is that business can solve a lot of problems. It can solve cultural problems. It can solve economic problems. So that's kind of really what I've kind of dedicated my life to with Causeartists now, is kind of having conversations and showing people how they can use business and, you know, even consumerism to bring us all together in a very odd way, but an impactful way.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. So if you could back in time and talk to your old 21-year-old self, what personal or professional advice would you give him?
Know that learning is going to be a very, very lifelong
Mm.
journey and battle. That will never stop. And understand that, you know, technology was not a fad, right? And I would go back and say, like, this is going to be in your life forever. So learn about it, no matter what part of, you know, if you want to learn to be a software developer or just learn how to use the internet, right? Learn what that is and how it works. I would go back and sort of pound that into my younger self's head, is that, look, this is going to transform the world and you better know how to use it. Because if you don't, you'll be severely left behind. So that is one thing I would definitely I would definitely talk to my younger self about.
Yeah, absolutely. You can never go wrong when you're still learning. For sure. Well, thank you for catching us up a little bit on your background. That was super interesting. And New Orleans is a great city, but like you said, every place has its pros and its cons. So it sounds like it shaped you in for the good, for sure. So I'd like to also talk to you, of course, about your professional journey and what led up to Causeartist. So what did you do before founding Causeartist, or like many entrepreneurs maybe did at the same time while you were building Causeartist, but what did that look like before it became the organization it is now?
Yeah, I've done a ton of different jobs in my life. And like I said, throughout those odd jobs, I was always like learning how to use the internet and learning how to do different things. Because if you don't have money to like hire people to do it for you, you have to do it yourself.
Yep.
So the only way to do that is to just learn it. So I just learned everything on my own through all the different jobs I had. And then I just did website design for different clients early on, and kind of built out a small client base with that. And my degree I ended up getting was digital media and political science. So that kind of was really the foundation on try to how to use my digital media skills, but also look at how we can tell stories and design it well around topics that are not usually, they're more made for like, you know, college professor like literature, right? Or like reporting that a university does, or like an analytics report that a company puts out. Nobody reads it. But as digital media moves forward, you can present content in a certain way. So I wanted to kind of blend what normally was like boring issues or boring pieces of information and content, and blend it with, you know, different, better design. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with Causeartists, is kind of make it visually appealing and to showcase certain issues of issues that we face in our society, and maybe how businesses are helping to solve that. You know, usually, you know, a lot of people aren't going to read these case studies and things like that. But if you present it in a different way, I think there's more people, and even younger people will be attracted to it, and maybe they read it and get some information and discover an education out of it. So that was really, you know, what that degree helped me figure out and find out. And then just slowly just started building more and more, you know, digital assets across for companies and individuals. And I was like, man, I really want to do something on my own. So, you know, started Causeartists. Very, very, it was very, very small and just very like, what are we doing here? And it was based off of a lot of used to follow. So they used to have all these websites where like they would showcase the new shoes that were coming out. And I was like, this would be, and this was like right at the point where like Tom's was just coming out, and like Warby Parker, and there was some brands out there that were actually doing products and brands for certain causes. And I thought that was really cool. And so I was like, well, what if you could take that same sort of blogging structure and put it into like, hey, what are the new shoes made out of plastic bottles coming out? What are those? Or a shirt made from, you know, waste. And that was like really interesting. It's like there's different products being made that have a certain cause behind it. And I was like, this is really cool that we can kind of now, you know, wear or buy and support causes that we care about through products, right? That was really interesting to me. So that's kind of the first iteration of it, was trying to figure out how to blend all those different things together into what Causeartist is.
Wow. It looks like you have had lots of inner creativity and curiosity at the same time. So for those who are unfamiliar with Causeartist, could you tell us about your mission and your aha moments for launching it?
Yeah, the aha moment was, it wasn't really one moment. It was just kind of a culmination of like, I knew I wanted to build some type of hub around all these different brands and founders, creating new companies, and around how do we solve a social issue with our company, rather than solving maybe, you know, a market issue, which usually most businesses are solving like a market-based problem, where these founders and companies were really solving like social problems with businesses. So I thought that was a really interesting way to try to solve some of the stuff that we have going on in our world that are negative. And so I knew I wanted to blend something like that together. So I ended up kind of really creating a hub, a curation, if you will, of products and insights and interviews from around the world, from, you know, founders, brands, and companies that are developing the next, you know, innovative, you know, products and technologies around solving climate change, solving poverty, solving education, solving mental health. So all these different aspects, we need business to really help solve them. Without, you know, business, governments aren't capable of solving all these issues. So really looking at and just having a discovery engine and an educational engine, really, if you will, for people to come and see what changes they can make within their life with their purchasing power, of like, hey, how can I, you know, participate in solving homelessness through the products I buy? You know, well, you can buy from a brand that employs homeless individuals, right, to make, their shirts or their socks or something like that. So just helping people understand that their dollar goes a very, very long way. And that spending that money properly can actually help solve a lot of the issues that we want to solve.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think discovery is a great word for it. I was reading, I've been a reader. You and I have emailed back and forth over the years, and I've been a reader for a long time. And I was reading an article the other day, and it was like 23 apps you can use to change your everyday habits or whatever. And I was like, oh, I'm sure I know a lot of these. I pride myself on staying up on this stuff too. And I knew like 2 or 3. So I was like trying to make notes of what I could go do next, because I was surprised at how many I hadn't seen before. So I think discovery is definitely a great word for Causeartist. And it really is remarkable, all the information that you've cultivated. And even more incredible, you've been read by your articles have been read by people in over 200 countries and territories, which is outstanding. So you've been at this for a while now. Have you been surprised how people all over the world have been drawn to these stories? And what are some of the reactions that people have had along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously wild when you look at, your back end sort of dashboard, and you look at all the countries and territories that you don't even know, right?
Yeah.
That exist. I also discovered places that I didn't even know exist in the world through that. So it's really humbling, but it's also super motivating, because that means there's an appetite for people around the world that want to do better, right? And want to discover more things and educate themselves on how they can participate in the global economy, like in a much better way. So that's really been inspiring and humbling. And obviously, anytime I think you get feedback from anybody across any economic spectrum or background or country or territory, it's empowering. It really helps motivate me to keep going. So yeah, I've had people reach out from everywhere across the world, and it's been a really powerful experience to know that the platform has helped people, whether it's like download an app that they never heard of, or buy from a company that is solving a problem that they want to solve, and that's a big thing. To me, that's a profound moment that somebody took out of their life to like read something that I wrote. Like, that is significant to me. So I'm always thankful and humbled when people reach out and say that they appreciate the platform and just keep going, because as we all sometimes we all get down and we want to it's like, oh, maybe it's not for me, maybe we could shut down the site and go do something else. But I always get like encouraging messages that now it'll just be like around forever. So it's super important when I get that feedback. It's really great.
Fantastic.
Amazing. So, Grant, you also have the Disruptors for Good podcast, and have conducted over 600 interviews with social impact leaders around the world. Who were a couple of your favorites, or who has stood out to you?
That's really difficult. It's hard because it's like you don't want to leave anybody out. A few that off the top of my mind is, and I really like truly am amazed by what these founders are doing, is Ruben Harris at Career Karma is building what I think is one of the most impactful companies in America. Is essentially democratizing software engineering, right? So usually before, you'd have to go to a university, right, and go through a computer science program and pay crazy amount of money and get in debt to get a computer science sort of degree and then a nice high paying tech job. But what he's created is now basically anybody with a laptop can take courses, essentially software development bootcamp courses. So anybody can go from not knowing anything to within 10 months being a software developer and getting a high paying job. And now we all can work remotely. So individuals don't have to move now. They can work in New Orleans or Baltimore or Omaha, and work for big tech companies or small startups and get paid, an amazing salary that changes not only their life, but also their family's life. So to me, that is such a powerful company and mission that they are on. So I always encourage people to check out what he and Career Karma is doing. Another would be Maddie Apparel. My friend Haley started a woman's sort of garment company, and because she had some issues with domestic violence in her own family, and found out that underwear was the most requested item in women's domestic shelters, because a lot of people don't donate underwear, and it's so true when you think about it. So she started a company where for every pair of underwear you buy, they donate a pair to a women's shelter around the country, and they've done some trips to Haiti as well. But even more so than that, which she then ended up doing is actually training these women in these domestic shelters and homeless shelters to actually learn how to cut and sew to actually make the underwear. So she's really created a whole life cycle of impact around job creation for individuals who might have to just have sort of careers that they don't want to have for their lives, or don't have any skill base, just because when women are in that environment, it's just very difficult for them to achieve what they want personally. So like her creating jobs, giving back, and also creating a beautiful product for consumers to buy, just an amazing life cycle of impact. So I always want to shout her out. And then the last one would be my guy Trinity in Uganda. One of the most incredible stories I've ever heard. He was a street kid in the slums of Uganda, with really like no path and no future, right? Until an organization like got him off the street and gave him a laptop. And now he's running not only a nonprofit, but also a for-profit technology hub in the middle of Uganda that support all the kids in the slums and the adults there with technology training around JavaScript or graphic design or website design. And then he has clients all around the world. Goes back to our remote thing now. Now he can have a tech hub in the middle of the slums in Uganda that support companies in the UK or in the Netherlands, the United States.
Wow.
But changes the entire landscape of that entire community, dozens and hundreds of families, based off what he has built. So like that stuff is really incredible. And I hope more people get to know who he is and what he is doing. But again, there's so many out there that are doing amazing stuff like that. But those are the ones that are top of mind right now, but I can go on for days.
Yeah, those are pretty great. So yeah, that's the Disruptors for Good podcast. So you've heard about 3, now go listen to the other 597. Yeah, that must keep you going. That's kind of why we do this podcast as well, is the stories just keep you going, and people are really creative at solving big problems. We also have a lot of budding social entrepreneurs listening to the podcast. So I'd love for them to have the opportunity to learn from you, since we've heard about some of your successes. So what's something that a mistake maybe you made early on, or perhaps last week, that you can tell us about, that you've made while running Causeartist, that others can learn from, that you would do differently?
Oh, that's the easiest. The biggest mistake I ever made was like, I didn't even have like a email capture like the first 3 years the platform was up. So now obviously, like looking back, I was like, wow, that was really horrible that I wasn't even capturing emails. But I was so concentrated on doing the interviews and doing social and like, anyway. So it's never too early to capture emails. Right. I would say like getting a landing page up and capturing emails is the easiest thing to do. So that should be anybody's first step. Yes. But I would say it's the age old thing that I think we talked about earlier, was like, always learn how to build stuff. Technology now is so available for everybody, and a lot of stuff is free. So like if it's an e-commerce site or if it's an email platform, like, I'm one person that does Causeartist. So like if I can do it, like there's a lot you can do just as one person. So I would just learn how you can have an easy technology stack that could really do what your company wants to do. and just learn it. Take an hour out of your day to learn about different technologies out there that will help your business, and just build it and work and go from there. Because unless you're going to raise money, you're going to have to learn how to build certain things on your own. And the worst thing you could do is hire somebody just because they're cheap.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a really bad product probably, or not that great. And then that will look bad upon you, and you lose early users.
Yeah.
So early on, it's always, to me, important of understanding how things work. So even when you hire a person, you understand like what you need to ask them. Because if you go in there with like absolutely ignorant to what you're asking, then you're not going to ask the right questions, and somebody could take advantage of you and charge you a lot of money for inferior services. And that's happened to me often. And I was like, and it's happened to a lot of friends. So I always say, look, learn at least a little bit the elementary stuff before you start paying people for services, just because starting out, usually you don't have a lot of funds to waste, and those early decisions matter a lot. So definitely learn before you hire.
Makes sense.
Okay, so what's next for the social impact space, and what trends do you see?
Yeah, I think right now, it's climate and sort of fashion are like coming together in wild ways.
Yeah.
Really, from a material standpoint, there's so many crazy materials being made from like our garbage and plastics. So shoes and jackets and shirts are being made from plastic water bottles that are being prevented from going into our ocean. Or there's some companies out there that are actually nonprofits who are taking plastic out the ocean, and then making products out of that. So that stuff is really, really interesting and starting to scale quite rapidly. And then there's also a lot of things within the agriculture space around obviously meat, and sort of how do we perhaps not use as much meat in our sort of food supply chain system, and us as consumers, how to consume maybe less meat. There's a lot of really crazy innovative stuff going on, and using simple animal DNA to kind of just actually grow animal type meat, right? Which is crazy. So you will no longer have to kill animals to get meat.
Yeah.
Which is really insane to think about, but companies are already doing it. So regenerative farming and understanding how we can use these technologies to actually raise animals in a really healthy and sustainable way. And also use these technologies to actually grow animal meat rather than slaughter. So that's a really, really, really powerful thing and impactful thing. So fashion and agriculture are two really, really massive markets. So as they sort of shift into much more, environmentally friendly, so to speak, or just really looking at themselves as really massive sectors, and say, hey, how do we be much more sustainable as businesses? And because consumers are going to want that, so they have to sort of shift their mentality, and then technology is starting to catch up with what consumers want. So agriculture and fashion are two industries that are shifting very, very dramatically right now, which is fun to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually just attended a conference last week on sustainabilism and on sustainable companies and brands, and all of those subjects you just mentioned were front and center on the stage. So yes, absolutely. Completely agree with you. And it was neat to hear you reinforce that as well, and to see people working in that space. What about Causeartists? What's next for you? I know you've been making some changes behind the scenes and now about to be in front of the scenes as well. So what's going on over there?
Yeah, I mean, just building out much more content around audio, and we're doing some visual stuff around video soon, but really allowing more people to come on the platform and start their own podcast shows, which is interesting, and really use Causeartist as much more of a distribution platform. Okay. Where other people can come and distribute their own content that is relevant to the Causeartist audience and ecosystem. So really starting to branch out more, where I am not doing all the content. I have much people around the world who are doing great things, want to contribute stuff. So developing an ecosystem where that's sort of easily done and much more efficiently, but definitely diving into audio much more, doing many more podcasts and different shows and different styles of shows and things like that. And then eventually video with, live Q&As and sort of live sessions and panels and things like that around, certain topics and stuff. So really, really interesting stuff. And then some stuff I can't talk about, but happy to come back on when those things come about. I'm happy to share that.
Sounds good.
Wow, that's very interesting. So, well, just to wrapping up this session with us, so how can our listeners connect with you and with Causeartist?
Usually it's just at Causeartist on every platform you can imagine. So that's the easiest way to do it. Me personally, it's just Grant at Causeartist.com. Don't really do a lot of personal social, so I keep everything through the at Causeartist handle. So I run all those. So if anybody wants to get in touch, that's probably the easiest way to do so. So in Causeartist.com, obviously.
Fantastic.
And the Disruptors for Good podcast, which
yes,
you have named. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go on there, read all the interesting articles, learn what creativity and innovation are coming out, because it's really exciting, and everybody will find something that they didn't know before. So back to that learning curve and to keep growing and learning. So yeah, definitely a place to do that and a hub for that. Thank you so much, Grant. This was awesome. So glad to be able to talk to you. So glad to be able to share your mission with more people and hopefully spread the word about other social impact companies and people doing good things around the world. So thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it and loved chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great.
All right. And thank you so much for listening. We hope you'll tune into the next one. We've got more great conversations coming up. So tune into the Logistics with Purpose podcast. Thanks so much, everyone.